Hey everyone, I'm going to do this as quickly as I can. Seeing as though my mom and my nephews are at church right now, and going to church many times myself, I pretty much have an idea that it's just getting ready to wrap up in a little bit. But anyway, I want to talk about something. You know, ever since Facebook came out, one of the major things, if not overall things, that we like about Facebook is it allows us to communicate with family and friends and stay in contact with them as best we can. But it also allows us to join up and like certain official fan pages, certain official pages, unofficial pages, fan made pages of any kind of media out there, from television, movies, comic books, you name it. Well, one of these groups that I joined up with, I also befriended some people at. One of them being, I think, Victor D. Silva. And Victor shared an article from a website that I guess also has a Facebook page. I'm not really sure. But shared an article, I think, along with MoviePilot.com or MoviePilot.com's TV Facebook page, because Movie Pilot has several. Movie Pilot has one on superheroes, animation, television, you name it. So must have shared it from the Movie Pilot television page, Facebook page. But anyway, when he shared this article basically pointed out what is the top 10 worst episodes ever made that we as fans, we as viewers, wish we could forget and pretend never happened. Now, this top 10 list, and if I can find the link to it, I'll provide it down in the description. But this top 10 list had episodes from a variety of shows. Shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the spin off series Angel, Battlestar Galactica, I think, was in there, I'm not really sure. Doctor Who was in there several times, among others. And then there was one that was in there from Star Trek Voyager. Yeah, you pretty much know which one I'm probably talking about, right? Now we know that Star Trek in its entire history has had some very weird, screwed up episodes that when you look back on it, you kind of ask yourself, what in the world were they thinking? What was going through their mindset at that time? Well, Star Trek Voyager would not be the first and would not be the last. See, the guy that wrote this episode had wrote a variety of episodes for many Star Trek incarnations, television incarnations, I should say. Wrote hundreds, among thousands of episodes. And yes, he has written more than his share of, what the heck episodes were he thinking style. Or basically, he has written his share of episodes that are along the lines of what the blank was he thinking. I mean, he did Genesis for Next Generation. So, which is also one of the most disliked, probably not as much as this is, but one of the most disliked, if not disdained episodes of the Star Trek franchise, but not at the level as this one from Voyager. See, this one from Voyager is so bad and so critically panned, not just by fans, not just by critics themselves, but years later by the actual creative staff and the writer himself have come out and basically panned this episode and said it was a mistake to do and that it was an overall stinker, along with some of the cast members. This episode is so bad that not only has all that happened, not only has all those people said things, even those involved, even the writer, but this episode's so bad that it is basically erased from canon. Right, that's right. It is a non-canon one-off shoot episode. A one-off episode. Non-canon, has nothing to do with the continuity, nothing to do with the storyline. It is non-canon. Now you might say to yourself, well, how bad could it be that what episode out of Star Trek Voyager or any Star Trek franchise could be so bad that it ends up with that fate? The episode is called Threshold. And basically, this is what it's about. Here's what it's about. The character, Tom Paris, has been testing out simulations and simulations of what it would be like to try to go to Warp 10. So basically, he finally is able to convince the Captain Janaway, or Cat Janaway, if you will, Captain Janaway. He's able to finally convince her, let me physically test it out with a shuttle, with a small spaceship, small experimental craft or whatever, just a small expendable ship, if you will. Well, he does this, and it seems that he succeeds in achieving Warp 10, but as he does, the ship goes into a critical situation that things start exploding all over and everything after he's achieved this Warp 10, and that because of this, there ends up being some consequences. There ends up being some after effects. And these consequences and after effects are on a physical standpoint, from a physical standpoint, because basically, because of what he's done, because of what the Tom Paris character did, he ends up, as a result, this is the consequence and after effect, ends up mutating, or as we find out later on in the episode, evolving into a new higher species. That's basically the answer to the situation in a nutshell that we find out later on towards the end of the episode, or close to it. That it's not a mutation, it's an evolution. Now here's what the writer of the episode said. He was basically playing with the idea, overall he was basically playing with the idea of what it would be like if evolution came full circle and instead of evolving into this higher plane of life that a lot of people think we're going to be evolving to, that instead it comes full circle, and instead of evolving, we end up de-evolving back to what we came from. Basically back to that first amphibian creature that stepped foot on land out of water. Yeah, that was what the writer was trying to aim for, one of the things he was trying to aim for. He basically has come out and also said, though, I have no idea where the lizard thing came from. But, well, actually, he said that before he did kind of later on add the fact that he was probably going for that evolution into being more of a de-evolution back to what we were, or something. That's how crazy this episode is. That's how ridiculed this episode is. It's so bad that even looking back at it, the writer has no idea why he did it. He has no idea why he said, oh, well, this is the reason, this has happened, or this is the reason, such and such is happening, kind of deal. Let me adjust that a little bit. There we go. But, this is the reason why such and such is happening. He basically, looking back at it, he has no idea why he did it, or why he came up with that concept. But here's what's crazy about it. Here's what really pans this. A lot of fans and critics and people in the business feel insulted because of this episode, because of its take on evolution. But if you think that's what makes it hated and despised so much, how about this? As the Tom Paris character is de-evolving and changing and changing and changing, as much as the crew's trying to help him and help him and help him, there comes a point in the episode where a situation occurs where he ends up breaking free. He ends up confronting and kidnapping Captain Janaway. He ends up taking this one Discovery Explorer ship called the Condorum or something like that. I can't really pronounce its name, so I apologize. But he ends up stealing the ship and taking himself and the captain inside. And he ends up, basically ends up stealing the ship along and basically escapes from the Voyager along with the captain. So as he's escaping from the Voyager, he ends up doing to this ship that he did to the other experimental expandable ship, and ends up taking it to warp 10. And because he ends up taking this ship to warp 10, it takes Voyager 3 days, because they don't want to chance any damage happen, because the crew doesn't want to, the second in command captain, kind of like the standby captain, he doesn't want to chance anything happening. So basically it takes them 3 days to finally locate where this the Explorer ship has landed, where Tom Paris took him and the captain to. And then as they get there, they detect, okay, that's where the ship's at, and it's obvious, and we're going to see if maybe the captain and Paris are down there, right? So they go down there. Long story short, they end up fighting the captain. Captain Janaway. They end up fighting Tom Paris, but not as humans, but as salamander-like creatures. That's right, as salamander-like creatures. And that's what's insulting about it. That's what some fans look at and make no sense about. That's what some of the cast members make. I mean, the lady that played Captain Janaway herself, the actress that played Janaway herself, at several conventions, in fact, one convention, I think it might be on YouTube, even said she regretted, or even was against, or regretted the idea that she would end up in a kind of a lizard form, salamander form, end up having sex and mating with the Tom Paris character. And again, if you think that's crazy, if you think that's one of the main reasons why everybody basically takes this episode and says, out of the continuity you go, you're just a one-off deal. If you think that's one of the reasons, and it is, how about the fact that when the crew when the captain and the rest and some of the crew ends up beaming down and finding the captain and Tom Paris in these now evolved or de-evolved into these salamander-like creatures, how about on top of that, they discover that not only have they become these salamander-like creatures, but they have also had sex together. They basically mated together, and in the process had offspring. 3 little salamander-like babies. And again, looking back on it, the main writer of most of the Star Trek series even now wonders what the heck he was thinking. And this is why this show is so critically panned, so critically hated by all parties. It's been basically taken out of context and placed as a one-off deal. Yeah. It's basically taken out of context and placed as a one-off deal. But you know what? It's not the first, and it won't be the last. That's right. It's not the first, and it won't be the last. I'll give you an explanation. This is going to be a 2-parter, so I'll give you an explanation. And that was an indication that somebody sent me a message on email or Facebook. But I'll give you an explanation in just a bit.